Hey, I'm Angie Cha-Cha, and I'm chatting with Staxx.
Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Angie Cha-Cha. Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate that.
Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Fort Knox, Kentucky, and I was raised in all over different parts of Kentucky, primarily like around the Louisville area, and then also in New York as well. And then during my teen years, my mother married a military man, and so then we moved down to Georgia, and so that's what I consider my home.
So you were all over the place.
Yeah, I'm a military brat. My dad was in the military. My grandfather was in the military. I got two uncles in the military, and then my stepfather, he was in the military too. So my parents are gypsies too. So they're just even my mom, she's not in the military, but she's like my dad. They're just travelers, so they just be everywhere.
Did you live on the bases too?
Yeah, I've got to experience living on the bases, not through my dad, because my dad actually got kicked out of the Army when I was a baby. He ended up going AWOL. So I got to experience living on the military bases through my stepdad as a teenager.
What's that like?
It was pretty cool because honestly, I grew up being my mother. Both of my parents are mixed races. And so my mother is Asian, Native American, and white, and my father is Puerto Rican and Black. And so when I was growing up, I was raised by my mother. And my mother, she kind of tended to live in areas where there was like a lot of white people mostly. And so like I ended up going to school with a lot, predominantly mostly white people with just a few of the other races mixed in there. Yeah. And it made me feel left out. It made me feel, like the odd one out the bunch, because there was like nobody in school that kind of like was mixed like I am. It was just like they were just one race, and then here goes me. And so I had like a little bit of like identity issues growing up, trying to figure out where I fit in. And it wasn't until my mom married my stepdad that I was able to really feel like I fit in somewhere, because a lot of the people in the military come from all walks of life. So I got to actually experience being around all kinds of different people, like Samoan people and other Puerto Rican people, and I didn't get that, growing up. So I got to be around, people that were more like me. So it made me feel like more included.
That's got to be hard growing up like that and not knowing, like, with so many ethnicities in you. It's like, I feel like confused, right?
See, I didn't notice it because when you're a child, you have such a pure spirit. And so racism is taught. And so like, you're not paying attention to stuff like that. You're just wanting to connect with people. It doesn't matter what their skin color is. You just want to make friends with people, connect with them. And it was brought to my attention when I was like 8 that I was different. And so because of the children making fun of me at school, like they would take their fingers and slant their eyes back and make, like ching chong chang and say stuff like that, like little Asian type of trying to mimic Asian people. Then they would, say stuff to me, like, well, what are you? Like as if I was an alien or something like that, because to them, a lot of times, when you're young like that, it's just like you only know black and white.
And you don't even know what to say, right?
Yeah. And so like I'm just sitting here and I'm like, well, I'm not black and I'm not white. And so like I didn't know how to answer them. And it made me feel like really confused, especially growing up with a lot of white people. And so I went home to my mom one day, and after that happened, and I was just like, Mom, I was like, what am I? And she goes, what do you mean, what are you? And I told her about what happened at school, and she was like, oh. And that's when she had to sit down and have the conversation with me. And so she just made it real surface level for me because I was so young. But she told me, she was like, well, you're Japanese and white and Puerto Rican. And so I didn't know about the other races until I got older because my mom just wanted to simplify it for me, you know, based off what I am seeing in my life. So, like, I'm looking at my dad, and my dad, I know that my dad is Puerto Rican because he's always talking about it, that he's Puerto Rican. He's always making Spanish food. So, like, it helped me resonate with that. Like, okay, that's what that is. And then my grandmother, who is like my favorite person in the world, she passed away last year, but me and her were extremely close with each other. And she is Japanese. So, like, my mom was like, well, your grandma is Japanese. And she said, so my mom is Japanese and my dad is white, so you're Japanese, white, and Puerto Rican. But then when I got older, I found out it was like way deeper than that. That's,
Like, what do you tell the kids when you go back to school? You're like,
I just told them, what my mom told me, like, I'm
yeah.
Japanese, white, and Puerto Rican. And then, they I would get like really ignorant children, especially in middle school, and they was like, you can't be all them things. And I was just like so confused because it's like, but I see my mom and my dad, and I know that that's what I am. Like, now you're trying to gaslight me.
Kids can be mean. They really can.
Yes, they can. They can be really cruel, but a lot of times too, it's not their fault for being that way. It's the parents' fault for not educating their children.
Yeah.
Like, if they would have educated their children on the fact that there's all kinds of different races out there, and that people can in fact be multiracial, and like even deeply multiracial, like me, not just three things, but there's like probably I have like six or seven. Like, I'm all the races except for Pacific Islander. That's how I explain it to people. Like, every race.
I have a black cousin, and I grew up with a lot of multi ethnic people, and it was never an issue where I was from. But it's like a melting pot where I'm from. A lot of people.
Where are you from?
Connecticut,
Oh, okay.
right outside of New York City, in between
Okay.
Boston and New York. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of. It's like a
You know what's
melting pot of
crazy?
people.
Even in New York, like, even though it's a melting pot out there, I still experience racism out there too. Because in my family, like on my dad's side of the family, all of his peoples are Puerto Rican. And so then they all have Puerto Rican mates. They all had children with Puerto Rican people. My dad was the only one that didn't. He found him a little Asian persuasion, and that and that's who he had children with. And
Yeah.
so, like, my cousins on my dad's side, they talk so much crap. Like, they've said like really weird things to me in my life, like, oh, well, you're not all Puerto Rican, you can't even speak Spanish. And it's just like, okay, well, me not speaking Spanish isn't my problem. That's your uncle's problem, because your uncle was absent in my life, and he didn't teach me growing up. He taught me all the bad words, so I know those.
Yeah.
But he wasn't in my life to teach me
Do
Spanish
you
so that I
speak
could go to work.
Japanese?
I
Do you
speak a
speak
little
Japanese?
bit. I know a little bit of words in Japanese. I know more Spanish than I do Japanese, because Japanese is a very hard language to learn.
Yeah.
Like, just their alpha. Like, I'm gonna tell you how to say "I love you" in Japanese, and this is gonna give you an example of how difficult their language is. Watashi wa anata o aishimasu. That's just to say I love you.
My
So
God.
yeah. So it gets like a little bit difficult. So I'm just like, even though English is supposedly the hardest language to learn because we have so many slang words, but Japanese is very difficult. Like, they have a very long alphabet. So I just kind of looked at that and I was like, okay. I'll just pick up some words here and there, but I don't know if I'm gonna like fully invest my time into learning that language because I literally would probably have to live in Japan and be around Japanese people so that it would stick with me. Because if you don't have no one to speak to or talk to, then you kind of forget it. Because that's what happened, with me and the Spanish. I learned in high school how to speak more Spanish, but being if I don't use it every day and I don't talk to a lot of Hispanic people, then it takes a minute for me to translate it, in my
Yeah.
mind when I am speaking it.
So you living down south. Where does your life go from there?
So living down south, I stayed living in the south up until I'm from Hinesville, which is a very small town near Fort Stewart, and maybe like an hour from Savannah. And so after I left, I was probably like in my early 20s, probably like around 24. And I ended up moving to Louisiana because my mom and my stepdad got stationed over there. And by the time that, like, my stepdad stayed in Georgia the whole time, like, I'm thinking, oh my God, my mom's marrying a military man. We're going to get to travel and go all these places. That did not happen. We stayed in that small town the whole time until I was an adult. And then they left and they went to Louisiana. And so like I stayed there because now I'm an adult by this time. I'm living my life. My first two children were born there. So I just ended up staying there because that's what I knew. I went to all through high school there. So like a lot of my friends and stuff were there. So I just stayed, and then probably like at that age, I was going through a domestic violence relationship, and I had called my mom and I was like, Mom, can I come and stay with you? Because I need to get out of this relationship. Like, I can't do this anymore. So my mom let me come and stay. And so then I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana, and that's where I was living at that time. And that's where I met my third child's father at, and had my third child there in Louisiana.
When you moved to Louisiana, how old are your kids? Your first kids,
My first two children, let me see, maybe like around 7 and 5.
and you take them with you, right? Down to
Yeah, of course, they was always with me. My children, like especially the first two, they were with me their whole lives until they were adult. 17, around 17 years old, they both went their own on their own journeys, but
yeah,
they stayed with me because their dad was absent too. He was in the military, but he was okay being a paycheck type of father instead of actually being a physical father there, being present for his children. And
yeah.
so,
You
yeah.
met him on the base.
Yeah, I met him. I was living on the base, but I met him at school. So I was in the 10th, where was I? Yeah, the 10th grade, and he was a senior. So yeah.
So after you go to Louisiana, how long do you stay there, and then where do you go from there?
In Louisiana, I didn't stay there very long. When I first moved there, it wasn't too long after I first moved there that I met my third child's father. And I stayed in a relationship with him for probably like a year and a half. When our or to 2 years, when our son was 4 months old, that's when I was done with him. He was an alcoholic, and so one time he came to my apartment. We were sharing at the time, but it was in my name, so technically it was mine, and he was living with me. But he came in, and it was late at night. He was drunk, and I forgot what we got into it about, but he just was raising his voice, talking really loud. And I was telling him, you need to be quiet because my children are sleeping. They have to go to school tomorrow. And our baby was laying on the bed. He picked up the baby wipes box, and he threw it at the wall towards the bed where the baby was at. And it bounced off the wall and it almost hit our baby. And that's when I was like, you know what, I'm not doing this. We're not gonna do this because you're not gonna come in here being belligerent and drunk, keeping my children up in the middle of the night. I already went through so much abuse in my life up until that point
It's
that
like flashbacks from the other
it was
relationship,
like,
right?
and my dad was an alcoholic and a drug addict, and I watched him so many times beat my mother. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm not we're not gonna do this. I'm not gonna live the same repeated life that my mother lived. I have to do something different. And so I told him, this is it. We're done. It's the end of it. And that was the end of the relationship. And I had a really close male friend of mine that had won a settlement from an accident. He got hit by a semi truck, and so he like got a large lump sum of money, and so he gave me the money to move, and actually drove the truck with my stuff in it from Louisiana to Kentucky to take me to my mom's house.
Did he
So
know you were leaving and he just was okay with it?
there
The
was nothing he
boyfriend?
could do. Like I broke up with him. I was done, and it was like several months after I broke up with him that I left. I told him I let him know though. I was like, I'm not staying here. I was like, there's nothing here for me. Like anybody that knows like Leesville, Louisiana knows ain't nothing in Leesville, Louisiana. It's a small town. Like you if you blink, you gonna miss it. That's what type of town it is. And
Yeah.
there was nothing for me to prosper. Like I'm a very creative, artistic person, and I always have been. And so living in like city type areas are better for me so that I can, get my work out there. When you're from a small town and you're like an artist, even if you're like a musician or something like that, like you're not going to thrive in a small town like that. You
No.
have to go to the bigger cities where there's more people. And so, like, I already knew this about myself. So I was just like, I can't thrive here. So I got to go. So, I decided also too, because I didn't have no family there. My mother and my stepdad had already left, and they got stationed to Kentucky, where my mom is from. And so, like, I was like, there's no point in me being here because my mom's not here no more. So I ended up leaving and going back with my mom. And,
Kentucky.
yep, to Kentucky.
Yeah.
And they lived in Radcliffe, which is right on the outside of Fort Knox, where I was born at. So my stepdad had got stationed over there. My mom, she wanted to be close to her mother too, to my grandmother. And at that time, my grandmother was still living on her own and taking care of herself. But it was a good thing that my mom got stationed there because not too long after that, my grandmother started experiencing dementia to where my
Yeah.
mom had to take care of her. And so I ended up moving there with my mom because I was like, nope, I'm gonna go back with my family. So I left and I went with my family and I stayed with my mom. And his dad, came out and told me, he was like, I don't want to be a summer dad. And I was like, I totally understand that because my first two children, their dad is Puerto Rican. And then this son, the third child, his dad is primarily black, but he has some Native American, and he's mixed with some Native American. So I told him, and I think there's some white in their family too. But I told him, as a black man, I know, I understand that because there's a lot of black men that are kept away from their children because they have bitter baby mamas. And so I definitely was never going to be no bitter baby mama. And I told him, like, I'll try to figure out something that maybe we can come up with a resolution or something like that so that you don't have to feel like that. So what I did was I started taking my son to see him, and he was still a baby at this time. So I would keep him for 3 months. Then I would take him to his dad, and his dad will keep him for 3 months. And we did that for a while. And then it started becoming too much for me because I was like 3 months, because I'm the one that's doing all the traveling on the bus, mind you.
That's
Taking,
a long time not to have your
yeah,
son,
it
right?
is. Because that's like an 18-hour bus ride. And every
That's
time,
crazy.
and I'm doing this by myself with a baby. So I'm just like, this is just becoming too much for me. So I decided, let's do every 6 months. So then we did every 6 months. And then we did that up until he was 4. And when he started getting close to school age, his dad was like, well, what are you going to do when he goes to school? Because we can't keep putting him in and out of different schools. Like, that's not going to be good for him. And I said, yeah, you're right. So I had to sit down and I had to make one of the very most difficult decisions that I've ever made in my life. So I talked to my mom and I talked to my sister, who is 2 years younger than me, and she has children. She was the only one that had children at the time. So it's like I'm only trying to talk to the mamas in the family because y'all are the only ones that can really give me the advice that I'm trying to seek right now. So I explained to them what was going on, and I was like, I don't know what to do, because I don't. This is his first child, his only child, and my sister, she has children. Her first two children is with a man that's Black and Korean, and just like me having Black roots in my family, like I understand what a lot of Black people go through. I empathize with them. I resonate with them. So I know there's a lot of men out there that experience, not having their children in their lives because, of situations like this. So I was just like, you know what? I said, I'm going to not be selfish and I'm going to think outside of myself right now. Now, here are the factors. I have 2 children already, and I raised them and I'm raising them by myself because their dad is not in the picture. So I'm already dealing with 2 children by myself, which is a lot for a young mom. I was a teen mom. I was only 17 when I had my first child. I was 19 when I had the second one. So I'm just like, at that time, I'm in my mid 20s. So I'm just like, you know, being in my mid 20s, having 3 children, trying to take care of 3 children by myself. Like, let's just have some common sense here. So I made the hard decision to give him to his father so that his father can raise him, because not only is he his father's first child and his father's only child at the time, but also his family dynamics were a lot better than mine. My family is very toxic. My mother is narcissistic. I didn't know this at that time. I just knew something was off with my family. And so I'm like, I don't want him growing up around this, like he will be so much better off with a loving family, because his dad's family is just like unconditional love, like beautiful people. Like, when I was around them, I felt like family, and they always included me. They made me feel like family. They was always so kind and sweet and generous to me. And it's like, I would rather my son have that and grow up seeing that than to grow up around my family, which is chaotic, crazy, and narcissistic, and they just do too much. They're toxic as hell. So I'm like, I feel like I was making the best choice. And so I sent him to live with his dad, and he's still living with his dad to this day. He's 21.
And he's doing good.
Yep, he is. He's a good child, and he has told me so many times, especially when he got older, when he was like a teenager, he would tell me, like, Mom, I really appreciate you for sending me to my dad and making that. I know that was a hard decision for you as a mother. And he said, um, but I just want you to know that you made a good decision, because I grew up around people that love me and care about me. And I grew up around a good family. And he goes, and I haven't been around your family too much, but the little bit of time that I have been around them, he goes, I can see why you made the decision that you did. He goes, because he said, I don't like how your family treats you. So it was it was nice for my son to recognize that and to not like see it in a different perspective and feel like that I didn't want him and that I just like pushed him on to his dad. Like he knew the truth and knew that why I did what I did, because I made sure that I talked to him about it all growing up, because obviously he's seeing that his brother and his sister are with me, and then he only gets to come and see me during the summertime. And so I never wanted to make him feel like, you know, it was because I was a bad mom and that's why your dad has you, or it was because I didn't want you and that's why your dad has you. Like, it wasn't none of that. So I
Yeah.
made sure that I always told him the truth about why he was with his dad, even when he was real young, like 7, you know, 9, 10, like that. I would sit down and I would talk to him and I would tell him, like remind him, like, why I sent you with your dad. You know that my family is just really messed up people and I don't want you around that. And I want you to be around people that you're going to have that's going to be able to support you in your life and that's going to be able to take care of you. And also because I have your brother and your sister and I'm the only parent, that they have. You have me and your dad. They just have me, And
Yeah.
so it's better this way, so that way I can focus on your brother and your sister, and that your dad and your family over there can focus on you, and everybody wins in the situation. So he was cool with it and he was okay. And he's always, praised me and told me, thank you for making that choice. So,
Because you could have been selfish and just kept him with you, and then his father wouldn't have seen him, and
yeah,
then maybe he would have held a resentment against you for that. You know?
yeah. Especially just him knowing what type of people that his dad's family are and how beautiful people they are, I would feel some type of way too. Like, wow, why the hell you have me growing up struggling with you and going through this bullshit, and you got my dad over here and he has this nice family that I could have experienced growing up around. Why would you take me from that?
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I made the decision. His dad is glad, he got what he wanted. That was just, every man that I've ever met always wants a son as their first child.
Yeah.
So and he got that. He got a son.
And every kid wants their father in their life. You know?
Yeah. Especially when you're a boy too. And I told him that, like, you're a boy, I can't teach you how to be a man. At some point in time you was going to need to be with your dad, so your dad can show you how to be a man, because I can't teach you that. Because I noticed the difference between him being around his dad. My youngest two, they actually both, my fourth child, I went through the same thing too, and he went and stayed with his dad too. So it's like I see the difference between those children and then my son, the oldest one that grew up around me. And it's like my oldest one, he got a lot of issues
There is
because
a difference the way when kids grow up into men that are raised by women versus
it
men.
is, it
There
is,
is.
it is
I
very
was
much.
raised by a woman. You know, I didn't
Men,
have that father figure to raise me. My father
men
left
that
when I was
are
young.
raised by women typically have more feminine traits too, because they're raised around women.
Yeah.
They don't know how to move and operate like a man does, because they mimic what they see. And so you can get a very masculine man, because all of us have feminine and masculine energy. But I study astrology, and based off your natal chart, which signs are stronger, because there's 6 feminine signs and 6 masculine signs. So depending on which signs are stronger, that's going to tell where your polarity lies, and your polarity has to do with your energy. So like for me, for example, I have more masculine signs in my natal chart. So even though I can come off like feminine in appearance, I'm very masculine by nature. Like I move like a man does. I don't be playing that. I'll be shutting stuff down. I don't give a damn. Like I'm really like rah rah rah. And so my son, he has a lot of feminine in his chart. So he's already feminine by nature. And then the fact that he grew up with a bunch of women, because I got a whole bunch of sisters. Like my mama has 7 children and she got 2 boys and 5 girls. So my son is growing up around a bunch of chicks, and so like
Yeah.
what you gonna get when you around that, you're gonna get, even though that he's feminine by nature, but even if he was masculine by nature, he would still have some type of feminine traits and behavior and mannerisms because he grew up around a lot of women. It's
See, I
just
went to the street and I learned how to be a man in the street. Ended up in prison and in and out of prison for a long time, and I was shaving in prison. I started growing beard in prison. It was
that, and a
crazy.
lot of men like that too that grew up, because my dad was like that. He was raised by his mom and he learned how to be a man in the street too. He
Yeah,
joined gangs and stuff like
yeah,
that. Yep. So he was
that's
in
what
and
I
out of
did.
prison too. So yeah.
A lot.
So
It seems like a cycle. A lot of men do that. That are
yeah.
raised by women. They end up running to the streets and trying to learn how to be a man in the street.